सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्. Om. Okay, so excuse me. Leaving off from where we were last time, it was on the topic of the two margas we were talking about, Pravritti and Nivritti Marga, and how the Pravritti Marga has two flavors. One is just your secular kind of Pravritti Marga, where people perform actions to pursue and accomplish various ends. And the second form of Pravritti Marga is where we talk about individuals who are studying, or not studying rather, but who are engaging in the world of actions, not so much to accomplish just a given result, but for the attainment of Chitta Shuddhi, which directly contributes to one's grasp of the knowledge and one's assimilation of the knowledge. I think it would be appropriate before we proceed with anything else to give Nikita some congratulations because she's back in Satsanga as a married woman. So, congratulations, Nikita. I hope your ceremony went very well. Please share pictures. And she's just back from her nice honeymoon in those dangerous islands that I described. so, so anyway, congratulations again. All right. So that's where we left off last time, and Nikita will start her Pravati Marga soon. 1 minute, I'll share the screen, and we can have a volunteer to read. Let me know once it pops up. Yeah, could someone, or maybe Anand Bhai, if you'd like to go, and then
Yeah, sure.
whoever else would like to go in order.
Believer, believer and non-believer. In English, we use the words atheist and theist purely with reference to whether or not a person believes in God. It is not so in Vaidika Dharma. Here, one may believe in the Veda and not believe in a personal God at all. Such a person interprets the Veda in such a way that there is no such Ishvara, no creator at all. Thus, there can be a Vaidika, one who accepts the Veda as a pramana, who is an astika, a believer, who believes in the Veda but does not believe in God as a person. For us, then, astika means someone who believes in the Veda as a pramana, and nastika is one who does not. Given this definition, there are many nastikas, people who do not accept the Veda as a pramana and who are religious. For instance, a follower of Buddha, although a Nastika, should not be dismissed as irreligious. Such people are religious in their own way. However, in our view, a Buddhist is a Nastika based on our definition of Astika and Nastika. Similarly, a person who follows Mahavira, a Jain, is also a Nastika. Sankhya philosopher Kapila and his followers, on the other hand, are Astikas, Vaidikas. They accept the Veda as a pramana, but they do not accept Ishvara. One who follows the Vedic rituals but who does not accept an Ishvara is also an Astika. Although Buddhists and Jains are Nastikas, they both believe in karma. They believe there is an afterlife and that there is such a thing as nirvana, liberation, or moksha, which is gained after a number of births. That is their belief, and they have their own arguments to support it. When moksha is the end in view, the two committed lifestyles, pravritti marga and nivritti marga, must be properly understood. They are stated very clearly in the Vedas and are again presented in the Gita as well as by Shankara in his opening commentary.
Any comments here or questions, rather?
Prashantji, what is the Pravritti Marg and the Nivritti Marg?
Sure. So, Pravriti Marga, there are two lifestyles which are prescribed. So, Pravriti Marga refers to a lifestyle that is more oriented towards actions. And Nivritti Marga is more related to the lifestyle of a sannyasi, where one has done some tyag of, pravritti. So, usually when a person gets married, we say, ki, acha, uski pravritti badh gayi hai. The pravritti has increased because now you're going to have an extended family. Later on, you'll have children. You'll have a new set of responsibilities. You'll have to get them ready to go to school, so on and so forth. So, all of these things where we are extending our actions out into the world is what is called pravritti. And nivritti is sort of withdrawing back from the world, but not in like one's own private headspace, because that's also a problem, but more about withdrawing from the world of names and forms to understand the reality, the truths, the underlying basis of life itself, the truth of oneself that one seeks. And so the nivritti marga is more of a sannyasi who is committed to seeking self knowledge, but then pravritti takes a sort of a backseat over there. Now, the Nivritti Marga itself has two flavors to it. As we mentioned earlier, that one flavor is that okay, you're just a regular average Joe who's going about their day-to-day affairs, making a living, bringing food to the table, so on and so forth, and engaging in activities for their own entertainment and pleasure and whatnot. So that is one flavor. The second flavor is what one should aspire towards. Hopefully it is something that we aspire towards, which is that we also engage in the world of actions because we all carry our own responsibilities for family and ourselves and profession and whatnot. But here it is not for the sake of achieving something material through these things. And I need to qualify that a little bit. I'm not saying material possessions or material acquisition is wrong. What I'm saying is that that is not the end in itself, but it is more looked upon as a means through which one attains chitta shuddhi. So, how does this distinction really take place? Suppose, again, go back to the average Joe example. Suppose I'm an akarmi, a karma yogi, right? Or let's say I'm not a karma yogi, to be more precise. I don't have a notion of Ishvara. I don't have an understanding of Vedanta. I don't care for Chitta Shuddhi, nothing. I'm just a hedonist person who's living life like any other person lives life. Okay, we are not here to pass judgment on whether they are right or wrong. All we can say is that that sort of lifestyle will engulf one in this chakkar, in the cycle of action and result and action and result, and the samsara will keep perpetuating. In fact, the problem there is that the sum total of prarabdha karma that we, or not prarabdha, the sum total of sanchita karma that we accumulate over a number of lifetimes is always going to be greater than the karma that we expend as prarabdha in a given lifetime. And so the problem there is that one just doesn't run out of karma, because every karma that we've performed in the past prompts a new set of actions. If you've eaten ice cream in the past, then you can have a longing for ice cream. If you've eaten idli dosa in the past, you can have a longing for it. Anything that you've tried, anything that you've tasted, anything that you've touched, any vasana that you've acquired, whether it's for alcohol or whether it could be for some sort of carnal desire, whatever it may be, these things create an action. They also create a result and they leave a flavor, which is what we call vasana, that flavor that they leave behind, a taste for it. And so then again, the mind gets busy and it keeps perpetuating a number of actions, and again it gets caught in that loop. So that is one kind of pravriti marga, which we think is not a very wise way to live life. The second type is again the same things one does, though not exactly the same things, but what I mean is the same extension into the world. But here the intention is that everything is centered around Ishvara. And we will see much more of this as we progress through chapter 2 and chapter 3 in the Gita, because it really gets more into detail. But just a little bit of a preview, because it's a good question. And it will also help us as we go about our day-to-day lives. The thing is that usually the reason we perform actions are for the sake of self gratification or a certain responsibility that we think we need to fulfill. That responsibility we talked about, family, work, whatever. So it's either something that I want to do because it's fun, or it's something that I need to do because it needs to be done. Those are the only two modalities that people usually function. Right? That's Artha and Kama, basically. But here, what we are saying is that I, as the individual, am not the one who is the author of either my actions or the results. Let's start with the results part because that's a bit easier to understand. What we say is that there is a certain law out there. There is a law which manages, which handles the world, which holds it in its place. And that law, I don't understand how it works. But I know that it works. For example, let's just take a simple fact, right? People say, I understand the law of gravity. I challenge anybody to explain it to me simply because nobody understands the law of gravity. People only understand how its work, how its working is, how its effect is. Right? They understand the cause-effect relationship of gravity, but nobody understands the mechanism that allows it to be there. So you create a mapping for it. You say that okay, the gravitational pull of one body m1 on another body m2 is inversely proportional to the distance between it and is proportional to the mass that it possesses, right? So you will say okay, that is the inverse gravitational law, and then there's a mass component to it. Okay, and then you create a gravitational constant mapping in your head. But then that formula will break down when you do some other detailed analysis. You start talking in relativistic terms. You start talking about quantizing gravity and all. Then that explanation is gone. Now you have to replace it with something more sophisticated. So then you will say it's a curvature in space time. No, let it. These are what I'm trying to explain here is that we know that there are certain laws in this world, but we don't understand how those laws work, and so we just approximate some models that give us some working understanding of what they might. Okay, but what we have to accept is that this world out there follows certain laws. That there is a certain atom, there is a certain electron, they do their job. They do their job, and that is good enough for me. Now, given that there are a set of laws out there which are functional, given that there is a universe which is understandable to me for mathematical modeling or whatever else it may be, implies very simply, without a doubt, that there has to be a lawgiver. It cannot, nature can't just construct something out of nothing. You don't create a computer program without a programmer. So these laws are encoded in the fabric of nature, and then there has to be ultimately somebody. I won't say somebody because again, we are creating this, man in the cloud sort of entity. Not somebody, but there has to be a conscious entity that is responsible for the ultimate laws and the functioning of the cosmos. Now, this law that we talk about also includes the law of karma. That means that nothing that I do, nothing that I say, and nothing that I think goes unaccounted for. All of these accounts are there in this ledger book. It's an accounting ledger book, and the account is kept of the punya karma that I performed, the pap karma that I performed. Even this ledger that we talk about is also maintained through the laws, which are the laws of Ishvara. Therefore, the results which come to me through the laws of Ishvara. And not only that, but now we get to the nuanced part that the actions that I perform are also because of the laws of Ishvara, because the setup, the system, the apparatus that I possess to perform actions are also given to me. They are given to me. I don't know how to create an organ of action. I don't know how to create a Vakindriya. I don't know how to create, my ability to interact with the world. Or I don't know how, the food that I eat gets converted into ATP, which translates as energy, and my cells get energized, and I'm able to function as a biomechanical being. I don't know that, but these are all laws which function, which allow me to act. That I have a free will is also part of the same laws, which is handed to me on a platter that I'm able to will, I'm able to think, I'm able to desire, I'm able to do. And so now, even my capacity to act is a given, and that is also a blessing of Ishvara. And so then one also thinks a little further that every action that I perform right now is a consequence of actions that I performed in the past. Because whatever I do right now is sort of channeled in the direction of what was determined by my past actions. Right? If I did something yesterday, it's going to carry over its effect even today. If I decided, let's say if somebody decided that they are going to stop eating onions or whatever it may be 10 years ago, then the results of that action will carry into the future, because again, that that becomes a habit that is formed. So if you really think about it, and we had spoken about this little bit earlier, and it's worth discussing it in more detail, that there is actually no such thing as free will. Beautiful. But when I say there is no free will, does not mean that we are wholly deterministic. Rather, what it implies is that there is an element of determinism which is determined by our past actions. And there is an element of will. There's a will component, but the will is not free because the will is always under the shadow of my past actions. So it's a very beautiful interplay. And that's why Puja Swami says we have will, but it is not free. And so if you go on the internet and you see there's this whole, has anybody heard of the new atheist? Right? You have Richard Dawkins, you have Sam Harris. There's one scientist or philosopher who passed away recently, Daniel Dennett, and Christopher Hitchens. So the way they came up with this expression, it's just a bit of a byline, but it's worth talking about. I think about 15 years or so, I don't remember exactly when, but these four people got together in Christopher Hitchens' home in Washington, D.C., and they started discussing the negative impact of religion. And by that time, some of these people had already written several books which were critical of primarily the Abrahamic religions, because they don't have an understanding of Vedas. And so, in this Christian lore, there is something called the four horsemen of the apocalypse. So they have this whole thing about there's going to be a great apocalypse and the world will come to an end, and they call it the end times, whatnot. And there are four horsemen apparently who come to, I suppose, prognosticate or to as a sign, as an omen that okay, this future, this apocalypse is going to come now. So those four horsemen arrived before the apocalypse. So anyway, these four atheists got together and they were called the horsemen of the atheistic religion, right? So now this Sam Harris has spent a large. He's a he studied neuroscience and PhD in neuroscience from Stanford, and he spent a large amount of his time basically trying to negate free will, that free will doesn't exist. And then on the other hand, you have other people. There's this one more person, I forget his name completely. He spent an entire career basically talking about how everything that we do is only purely deterministic. There is absolutely no such thing as free will whatsoever. But Pujya Swamiji, in a single statement, destroys the life's work of these two supposed geniuses by saying that there is no such thing as, there is will and it is not free. And that actually solves the conundrum, the deep philosophical question that people have battled for millennia, right from the time of the Greeks. That, is life deterministic or is it, do we have free will? And here we figure out that, guess what? It's a combination of the two. Why do you have to make a choice? And this is the folly of the West, I should say. The West loves to take sides. This camp or that camp, Republicans or Democrats, red or blue, white or black, this team versus that team. It's always about creating camps. Is the reality, that everything is a particle, or is it a wave? Why can't it be a bit of both? Why can't it be something else that has properties of both that we don't recognize yet? So we have to get out of this Western mindset of creating binaries in everything. They love the binary system. Whereas we as Hindus, as Sanatana Dharmis, have been so blessed because we actually accept the ternary system. See, you have Pullinga, you have Strilinga, you have Napunsaklinga. It's amazing. Then you talk about Satyam, you talk about Vyavaharikam, and you talk about Pratibhashakam. You talk about something that is true, you talk about something that is false, and you talk about something that is in between. And this is a very mature way to look at life, because it solves a lot of social issues as well. But that's a sort of a deviation. So okay, coming back to this Pravritti Marga. So now when I recognize that everything that is out there is a blessing of Ishvara, whatever comes to me is a blessing. Whatever I do is also blessed. My capacity to do is also blessed by Ishvara. Now, when I do something, I am creating an input. Uh, think in computer terms. If some of you are a little bit tech savvy, there's an input function. You put in there are certain parameters which govern that input function. Okay. Input, the function is like a process where certain transformation takes place, something takes place, some calculation takes place, some processing takes place. What I put into that processing mechanism, the function, and something else will come out of it. That mechanism is also Ishvara because that is the laws. The output is a result of whatever input has been performed. So when I perform an action, that is what we call agami karma. It goes through this process. There's a certain result that comes out of it, which we call prarabdha karma. And whatever is left over, the remainder of it, because every calculation will also have a remainder because you will not have a perfect divisor. That gets stored back into this. Let's call it a Maha hard drive that is this Jagat, and that comes back as that gets stored as Sanchita karma, which is ready to fructify another time. So now, when you think about it in this process, who the hell am I to assume that there is no such thing as Ishvara? Because how can anybody with an intelligent mind think that this is all just happenstance? That it just happens on its own because somehow, because it's just a little uh, random blip that decided to make the universe intelligible to us. Okay, so we accept that Ishvara is here, Ishvara is functioning through us, as us, and before and after us as well. So this recognition is what makes one a karma yogi. A karma yogi recognizes the presence and not just of Ishvara sitting somewhere, doling away orders. That, hey, bhai, ye karo, wo karo, do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that, or I'll, mess with you in eternal hell afterwards. Dekhenge badal. Like there's that kind of Ishvara we don't accept. That kind of Ishvara is a very childish, a very juvenile Ishvara. That is the Abrahamic God, which we don't accept. Ishvara, according to us, is both the Upadana Karanam and the Nimitta Karanam. The Upanadana Karanam means the material cause of all that there is. Whatever that there is, whatever you can point your finger at, including the finger itself, is nothing but a manifestation of this Ishvara, this glorious conscious entity that is Ishvara. And the Nimitta Karanam is that the first impulse, the first motion that was set in place where the laws are a certain way, that the laws are capable of supporting life, that they are capable of spawning a Jagat which is so well constructed, which with its parameters which are so well defined that life had to happen and karma had to happen and results had to happen and swarga had to happen and naraka had to happen and all of these things holding it together had to happen. That Ishvara is a nimitta karan, the intelligence also behind it, not just the material. So therefore, this recognition makes one a karma yogi. And see, here we've not even come to Vedanta, we've just come to Ishvara. And what will you hear about karma yogi if you go to in pop culture or you'll read some nonsensical book by this Devdutt Patnaik or something? Oh, karma yogi, you have to do your duty. Huh? You have to, I mean, okay, that is a part of it, but karma yogi is a deep appreciation of Ishvara. This appreciation, without Ishvara, there is no karma yoga. Pujya Swamiji says very clearly in multiple places that there is no karma yoga without Ishvara. There is no secular karma yoga. You can't say I am a karma yogi, but I don't accept Ishvara. Because then what is karma yoga centered on? So that is the pravritti marga that we as students of Vedanta are trying to follow, which is to see Ishvara as the end all be all of our existence. Okay, so that is pravritti marga. Now what happens, in Nivritti marga, not everybody is prepared for Nivritti marga because this is not a separate marga. Remember, the word marga here is not path, but it is a lifestyle. What Nivritti Marga presupposes is that I, as uh, as a living being, I as a Manushya, have relative maturity where I don't have so many longings for things which hold me back to the world of names and forms. I don't have a longing for carnal desire, whether it may be like sex or whatever else it may be. That thing, or I don't have a longing for having children, or I don't have a longing for amassing a vast repository of wealth, or I don't have a longing to make a name for myself, to make some career for myself, to be a professional, to do this, to do that. That doing ka longing jo hai, whatever action oriented longings there are, those longings are not there for this particular individual. And so, therefore, it becomes very natural for them to step away from their roles. And our Vedas are so compassionate, so brilliant that in their scope, that they have exempted such a person from any duty whatsoever. They don't have any duty whatsoever Therefore, you are a sannyasi. A sannyasi is exempt from the same standards that we follow. A sannyasi does not have to worry about paying taxes. Hopefully, nowadays I don't know what the secular people believe, but typically speaking, our duty as grihasthas, as householders, is to support a sannyasi. When they come home, we give them what is called bhiksha, and bhiksha is not begging. Bhiksha is a privilege that we as grihasthas are given so that we may serve the sannyasis. It's a privilege. So the sannyasis don't have any of the same obligations that we do. So then what do? Because the mind has to go somewhere. Their mind turns towards the self. Their entire preoccupation, the entire pursuit of a sannyasi is to grasp the nature of oneself. Who am I? Is the ultimate question that they are trying to address. And not just that, oh, who am I? Oh, I'm the Atma. Okay, good. Job done. Now I can, go and watch some TV or whatever. No. Assimilation of that fact, because it is a fact, and to dwell upon it and to imbibe it fully to the point where there is no second I other than oneself in my vision. That is the ultimate goal that a person on Nivritti Marga, which is the lifestyle of one who's taken to the Nivritti pursuit, is undergoing. And so this is how the two lifestyles are spoken of over here. Now, that is not the same, again, to emphasize earlier, it is not that one path is going to take you to moksha and the other path will also take you to moksha. No. Moksha means knowledge only. Moksha cannot be attained through any other means except through self-knowledge. Self-knowledge is moksha. Self-knowledge does not give you moksha. Self-knowledge alone is moksha. Therefore, Shravanam is the means for self-knowledge and there is no second means. Without Shravanam, self-knowledge cannot take place. So then the obvious question should be that if what I am suggesting, well, who am I to suggest? If what the Shastras are suggesting is that there is no other way to moksha except through self-knowledge, then why should one even bother with pravritti? Why should one bother with karma yoga also? Because not everybody's mind can be held by this single pointed pursuit of nivritti, of Brahma Vidya, of Atma Vidya. Because our minds are fickle, our minds wander. Sometimes we feel that, in life, I could have become an entrepreneur. I wish, I found the right girl for me. I wish I had like 2, 3 children whom I can send to school and be so happy. These wishes we have, and I'm not saying that there is anything wrong in them. But I'm saying that even with these wishes, even with this kind of life, one can move towards moksha because one can study Vedanta, one can listen to our acharyas, one can immerse oneself in the teaching while playing these other duties also. Except for the fact that, while our regular jobs are 8 hours a day, most of us don't have the luxury to study Vedanta 8 hours a day. That's the only difference. And maybe we have a couple of hours a day to immerse ourselves in the teaching. But the Karma Yoga is the conditioning program, or I should say, it is the deconditioning program, which deconditions us of a lot of problems, of a lot of projections, of a lot of aspirations that we've bottled up. We are able to fulfill these dharmic aspirations in a legitimate way by offering the fruits of these results, to Ishvara, by receiving the fruits also to Ishvara. That's why, there's a very beautiful thing. If you see what we do in our culture, it's none of it is redundant. It is symbolic. When you eat, when you prepare food, and I know, unfortunately, people in northern Bharat don't do this as much as in the south. But typically in the south, this Nevedyam is first offered to Bhagavan before we eat it. That is why he says Prasada. But now these, I don't know about others, but Gujaratis have this mentality that only when they cook sweets, they'll offer it to Bhagavan. But everything else, they'll just eat it like this. As soon as it comes from the kitchen, they'll put it in the stomach. But typically we offer it because in a way it is a reminder to us that, hey, guess what? Whatever is coming to you is coming from Bhagavan only. So why don't you take it as Prasada? And whatever you're doing also is, you're doing it for Ishvara only. You can either do something for your own glory, for your own sake, for your own vanity, or you can do it to preserve Ishvara's order. That is what you call Ritam. Ritam is the order. It is the vast order. And Dharma is the capacity, the exertion that we do to keep this order in its place. Suppose there's an ecological crisis. Suppose the rainforests are dying out. what can I do to make this a little better? What can I do to safeguard the environment? What can I do to alleviate poverty? What can I do to feed the poor? What can I do to educate those who don't have a means? What can I do to take care of animals? I mean, don't eat them. That's one place to start. Don't. But what can I do to make this world a better place for the ones who come after me, who inherit this world from me? That is a way to preserve the order. And Ishvara holds the entire cosmos in his grip, in his compassionate, not grip also, but in his embrace. Because grip sounds like a very strict thing, right? But it's an Ishvara's embrace. But we also have a certain role to play over here. Animals don't, because animals don't have will. We have free. We have will, which is not free, but we have that will. And so we have the capacity to cause great destruction. Human beings can destroy the world, and human beings can also preserve the world. The polarity or the spread, the what you call it, if you look at a distribution chart, the capacity of human beings to do good and to do bad is so extreme. You can be the greatest blessing on this planet, or you can be the worst curse, and that is a human being, and that is our capacity to think and act. So this is why Parvati Marga is important, because whatever actions we do, we want to condition them, and we want to condition our minds so that they become receptive to the teaching of Vedanta. And only then does Vedanta actually start working. Parvati Marga, Nivritti Marga. Any questions?
So one more question, Prashantji. You said there are three types of karma: prarabdha karma, arambhi karma, and what's the third one?
Prarabdha, Agami, and Sanchita. So
Ag-
here's a way to think about it. Let's take your example. Suppose you have a bank account. You don't take your bank, when you go out shopping. You don't carry the whole bank. You just carry your purse. So that purse that you carry for one trip, that is your prarabdha karma. The bank balance that you have is your sanchita karma, and what you spend is your agami karma. The change that they give back to you again goes back as your this thing, right? Sanchita, that gets added back to your bank balance. Whatever extra change you'll deposit it back again. So here what happens is that the totality of all karmas that we have performed over countless lifetimes, because there's no first birth, there's no idea of first birth. We've always been here as jivas. The totality of all of that karma is what is called sanchita. What I bring into this one life, the experiences that I will have in this life, the pain and pleasure both experiences, that is part of your prarabdha karma. And what actions I do in this life are agami karma.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Prashant,
Hmm?
can we say that
Um,
the point where our Sanchita karma goes to a zero balance is the point where uh, that's the point that coincides with self-knowledge.
Zero hoga hi nahi. It will never be zero. Every janma, your sanchita will always be plus, 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 plus. It will never be minus, 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 minus. It cannot be. Because the number of actions that we perform over a lifetime are always more than the sum total of the results. Always. Because it keeps getting added. Like think of it this way, like when you have a certain thought, when you're thinking deeply, that is a kind of karma also. But whatever it is that you do, that is a kind of karma. So the way this setup is built, is constructed, the way Ishvara has presented this life Shrishti to us, is that the balance will never reduce. Because then what ends up happening is that then there is no existence anymore. It's beautiful. I love this kind of stuff, because I have a I have a good habit, I suppose. Let's call it a good habit. I try to find holes in whatever it is that I understand. I will do my level best to negate my own ideas, because only then can I be sure that these ideas are watertight and they hold. I tried very hard to figure out that, okay, is it possible? Because if you see these time travel movies and other things. I was thinking about it. I said that, you know what? I don't accept that you can travel back in the past. I think it's ridiculous. I don't think there's any, it's not an engineering problem. It's actually a problem in physics. Right? I mean, they'll say that, okay, this sounds like a deviation, but I'll come to the main point. Um, they say you can travel in the future easy, very easy to do. You just have to, I mean, right now you are traveling to the future 1 second per second, right? You can travel into the future if you also move at sufficiently fast speeds. You can travel into the future if you hover over a large gravitational well, whether it's a massive object like a black hole or neutron star, whatever. You can travel into the future very easily. You take multiple circuits around the planet at even, whatever speed. The satellites that we have um, actually have the laws of relativity built into them to enable precision geopositioning. It's amazing because the satellites are a little away from the center of the Earth compared to us. Time actually ticks just a little faster in the satellites than it does on planet Earth. Time ticks just a little bit more on the mountains than it does at sea level. It's amazing. And so they've actually put in those corrections to ensure that the location is correct. Okay, so let me come back to that point. So then I said, okay, I dismiss this whole notion of traveling into the past, because what will happen? Your whole equation of sanchita karma, prarabdha karma, agami karma will be totally messed up. The law of cause and effect will be totally messed up. The whole idea of karma will be totally messed up. I said, I guarantee, Ishvara has created such a beautiful and such a perfect, obviously, Jagat, that you cannot violate the laws at all. And that's why, if you see, in order to travel back into the past, you need to actually travel faster than the speed of light. But there's a speed limit. The universe has a cosmic speed limit, and that is precisely the speed of light. So, in a very clear way, Ishvara doesn't permit time travel in the past because that would mess with the laws. It's amazing. It's just brilliant. So, coming to this point, same way, Ishvara does not permit Sanchita Karma to reduce life after life, because that will also mess up the whole Shrishti order. So that's why the way the karma is set up, the way the program is set up, is the inputs or the outputs rather will always go. There's a sort of an amplification process which will take place, but the output will always be amplified compared to the input, and so you will never run out of the karmas ever. In fact, that is the cardinal error of I don't know Buddhism very well, but like in Jainism, they say that you have to run out of your karma. You have to clear out your whole karmic balance in order to gain their version. I'm not saying it is the Vedantic teaching, their notion of what they consider moksha. And that also will not make sense, because how can I perform a set of actions to clear my existing actions? Whether it is meditation or some form of dhyana, it doesn't work. Nirvikalpa samadhi, it won't happen only. So, to put it shortly, you will never go zero. Sanchita karma will always be infinite. And one more thing, which is very important. Like I don't know the validity of this insight, because it's just some thought that came to me once. If it's false, I'll stand corrected. Um, when you talk about a good program, a good programmer is not one who can make a program work. A good programmer is one who can write the least lines of code to achieve the same result as another programmer who's written like 50 more lines of code. That's what a good programmer is. You need to be efficient. You need to be swift. You need to be very, use Occam's razor in the way life works. So over here, the way I think about it is that this whole Jagat is such a well constructed program that you can't improve upon it only. How can you improve upon it? You just can't. Even a slight tweak. There's a today a lot of insights are coming for some reason, but there's a beautiful scene in this movie called Amadeus. It's there's a guy called Mozart, which I think most people must have heard of, and there's this there's an arch enemy of Mozart whose name is Salieri. So this 1 second, let me turn off the screen. So this Salieri is very envious of Mozart's talent, because it's like a God-given talent sort of, right? Where the entire piece, the entire composition of his sonnets, or not sonnets, but of his operas and his symphonies are appearing to him in a single flash. It's not that in a linear sequence, he'll write it out, but in a single flash, the entire composition appears just like this. And so this guy is admiring Mozart's first draft, his initial draft of his work. And he makes this comment. He said that even a slight change would lead to diminishment. The slightest change to his composition would lead to diminishment because it is so perfect that you can't improve upon it. And such is also the case with Ishvara Shrishti, that even you try to mess with the laws even this much, and the whole Jagat, as you know, it will fall apart. Even one shift in the parameters and it's finished. The Jagat will not be there to support life. So this kind of thing is there. So the insight that I had is that suppose there is such a thing as Sanchita Karma, and if in every single life I have to be born in order to exhaust my karmas, but then we also say, this is this friend of mine who asked me this question. She asked me this about 2 to 3 years ago. And the question was that we are saying that this is all the laws of Ishvara. But then we are also presenting Ishvara as a compassionate entity who does good to us. How do you reconcile these two views? Because the laws are impersonal, but at the same time, there's a personal sense that we are attributing to Ishvara as a compassionate being, as a compassionate entity. So, how do you combine compassion and impersonal laws together? Because then there seems to be a contradiction. And the way I thought about it is that here, Ishvara's laws are compassionate in the sense that the laws follow the path of least resistance from ajnana to jnana. And therefore, for one who strikes the balance of recognizing this order while engaging in the world and while engaged in the pursuit to know the truth, there is a sort of fructification of those karmas which will lead to the end of this game of samsara. Does that make sense? Should I elaborate a little further?
So, the reason I had the question about Sanchita Karma get being zero at some point is
Mhm.
that if we always have inexhaustible karma, so that would lead to further. If we always have inexhaustible karma, infinite karma, it will lead to further births and deaths, right? And my understanding was that when you attain self knowledge, it kind of marks the end of your circle of birth and death. So how do you reconcile these two
Yeah,
things?
no, excellent question. I'll just come to that in a minute after I complete this one. So here, what happens is that when you embark on the pursuit of self-knowledge, if we compare life to a game, if you compare samsara, this whole cycle to a game, then the end game is where you actually find, you get the right cheat code sort of, right, in some sense, which is that you recognize that okay, the way out here is to recognize who I am, because the very cause of my birth, coming to your question, the very cause of my birth is because I take myself to be a limited jiva who's engaged in action. But when I recognize that I am the actionless self, the set of karmas that are fructified for me, that's why they say, no, that when one is on the path of ananya chintayantu mam ye janayu paripasate tesha nityam yuktanam yogakshemam mahamyam. Here, those out of an infinite set of karmas, now those sets of karmas will manifest which are most supportive of your pursuit to the truth. That is the compassion, because it is the optimal function. It is the quickest way from ajnana to jnana. The laws of karma have been optimized to facilitate the quickest travel from point A of ajnana to point B of jnana. And I think this is part of Ishvara's setup. And when I think about it, it gives me goosebumps because it's so beautiful. So now, to your point over here, um, you don't require to exhaust your karmas in order for the cycle of samsara to come to an end. Because the cycle of samsara is for the samsari. The recognition that I am no longer a samsari is the end of that cycle itself, because all karmas were performed by the samsari. The one who is wizened up to reality is no longer the same entity who was a samsari, because the identification as a samsari no longer exists. So it is almost like I have been framed for a crime that I did not perform. And when my identity as a real person, that, oh, you were not there at the crime scene at all, is revealed, those charges are wiped off. So what happens is that the whole Sanchita karma is rendered meaningless, because the person who performed those Sanchita karmas is not the one who identifies as the performer of actions in the first place. The person is Naishkarmya. The person sees that I am the non-doer. The doing happens. Results happen. Actions happen. I am that in the presence of which all of these things take place. I am the actionless self. And for the actionless self, there is no action, there is no result. It is now the question is, then what about the body of the person? Huh? The body of the person is not the person. Because if I am the actionless self, then my identification with the body is also not there. So the results still come to the body. I can tell you this for Pujya Swami Dayananda also. He lived this way. He lived as a Jivan Mukta, knowing that all of these things that he's doing are not being done by him. All of the things that are happening to him are not happening to him. He lived with that conviction. This is what a Jivan Mukta is. And therefore, in spite of countless bag of karmas, those karmas are not in my name anymore, just as the bank account number is wrong. So all of that money in that bank is no longer mine, because that account number, I was never the account holder in the first place. Then who is the account holder? The account holder is a non-entity, because the account holder was only the delusion that I am the holder of the karmic account. Isn't it amazing? It boggles your mind when you think about how beautiful this construct is. So therefore, karma cannot lead to knowledge. Karma cannot be exhausted for knowledge either. Knowledge alone leads to knowledge. And karmas only have a role insofar as chitta shuddhi is concerned. So, yeah. Does that address the question?
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? Okay. So, just a quick announcement before we proceed. So, I was thinking that there were several people from the WhatsApp group who would reach out to me routinely, just for, like, regular Vedanta related questions, or, okay, could you suggest what we can study, whom we should listen to, etc. So I figured that, first of all, I've said this in the past, but this weekly satsanga that we have, it is it is supplemental. It is not sufficient. It's not a sufficient condition for knowledge. It is something that will help clarify doubts, and it will keep us sort of rooted towards the tradition. The hope is that we are all studying Vedanta the rest of the week as well through other sources, doing Shravanam. I very strongly prescribe Pujya Swamiji and a few select students of his to study under, not everyone also, but a few select ones who are very legitimate in having internalized Pujya Swamiji's vision. And so then I figured that, okay, one of the challenges that people were facing, based on my conversations with them, was they were very motivated to begin with, but it's kind of like a motivation function. It starts like this, but then it starts dropping over time. And then, as one person said to me, I'm like, what happened? You're not coming anymore. They're like, life happened. I'm like, yeah. I mean, you have to make this a part of life, but okay, no problem. But here, so I thought that, okay, how can we approach this in a very compassionate way, where I know that I have a very high initial interest, and my interest also wanes over time with many other things. Fortunately, not here so far, but many other things it drops. So, this self-paced study doesn't work for everybody. Which is that, suppose you send a series of pravachans, they'll start listening to it for a period of time, and then eventually they will stop. And then life happens, right? So other things take over and they become more important. So then I figured that, okay, suppose we have a baseline that is established by a group of, say, I was thinking like 20, 25, but now I'm thinking more manageably like 10 to 15 people. And if these 10 to 15 people can be part of a small WhatsApp group, as opposed to the 860 people or something, a small group, where we poll individuals and figure out how many hours a week do you think you can realistically, not optimistically, but realistically commit. Somebody may say 2 hours a week, somebody may say 8 hours a week, somebody may say four. So you come up with an average, or you come up with a median number over here. And then suppose that hypothetically the median number is 4. Then let everybody in the group buy in to this 4 hours. A little bit of compromise on both sides. And then I can construct a custom syllabus for people to follow. That okay, if you're planning to Vedanta 4 hours a week, here is what I hope we can accomplish in a given week in studying Vedanta. Right? So then I would like give like something that's about 4 hours long. Pravachans most likely. Then this would continue every week until the third week. At the end of the third week, because again life happens, we'll give the fourth week as a buffer week for anybody who wants to catch up. Now, given these very modest circumstances and not piling up so much Vedanta altogether, but let's say 3 to 4 hours a week, and out of 3 weeks of the month, if in spite of that a person is not able to catch up, then one has no choice but to drop out of the program because we can't slow everybody else down. But that is my basic idea. That this way, what will happen is that we'll not all of us. I'm not assuming all of you all, but if anyone here wants to join, please do. But there are a few people who wanted to sign up, and so there's like 5 or 6 people who are already showing interest to do that kind of thing. If you are interested as well, I encourage you to join too, so that we can study something outside of the Bhagavad Gita, and we'll continue the Bhagavad Gita satsanga every week, but something in addition to that, because this will not be enough to go. Right, and that way, instead of self-pacing, we have some mild and healthy peer pressure. A healthy peer pressure where people are like all sort of keeping track, and we'll have a tracker there as well. That okay, you can and be honest about it. That okay, this is how much I did this week, and here's where I've fallen behind. Suppose a person falls behind, then maybe I can like work with individuals to figure out that okay, maybe we need to slow down, or what's stopping you. After a point, it's the individual's responsibility, but I suppose to the extent that I can encourage, I'm happy to do that. So is this something all of you all, if I can just get a quick shout of hands, are you interested in that? Would you like to sign up for that? Can everybody else want to count? Hands up, please. Anyone who's interested? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is that 5? 5 people. So 6. Manthan 6. Hands. Okay. So wait. Let me get that again. So let me write down the names so that I will send you all the separate invitation. Sorry, I don't remember names that easily. So who all? Okay, so Anand, Chandan.
Hey, is this going to be on the weekday? Do you know?
No. It will not be a session. Wait. Let me just write down the names first. Anand, Chandan, Anirudh, Nikita, Gopiji, Ritam, Manthan, Malaji, and Shwetaji, you also?
Yeah, so it will be a text. We just read the text and then we discuss how.
No discussion. If you have questions, you can raise those questions, but it will be at your end, which is that you will listen to a pravachan or there will be some reading material, but you will take responsibility for it yourself.
Okay.
And if there are questions that arise from it, then maybe we can decide to meet once a month or something like that to go over doubts, or even more effectively, you can bring it up during Gita Satsanga. Right? So because ultimately Vedanta is Vedanta, whether it's Gita or not, doesn't matter.
Okay,
So,
can you?
so you're up for it. So Shweta, okay, good. Good. And Balaji confirming, Sukumaji confirming. Any, I don't see your video, so I have no way of doing. Aparna ji.
Then, Namaste. I still have, I was just thinking we are attending this class and then along with this we will do that also, is it? We will
But yeah,
study a text on our own.
that's right. But that will not be a class. It will be in your own
That will not
environment.
be
You
a
will listen
class.
to pravachans or something. And I will create that syllabus, which I think will be a very good.
You will be sharing with us the pravachan to be heard for that week,
Absolutely. And
will you?
in cases
Oh,
where
okay.
where you need to make a purchase or something, I will also say that okay, this needs to be purchased. But at least for the first couple of months, I will get you all the resources you need because I know that it takes time to settle down. After a few months, if you settle down and if you think that this is of value to you, then I would encourage you to support the Gurukulam and buy it yourself. right? So, but first I will provide the material, and then later I will ask you all to purchase the material from Gurukulam, so that that pravritti is done on our part.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so
Okay.
is that
Ye-
again, no pressure. This is optional.
Yes, yes. I understand. Yeah, I'm interested, Prashantji. I'll join.
Okay, wonderful. So good. I mean, we have a good quorum, and I think this much is enough. And I'll shut down the registration after this, because I think we already have 10, 12 people. I'll bring it up to like 15, 16, then that's it. Good. All right. Any other questions before we close? No? Okay. I think we'll close for today, tonight, whichever wherever time zone you are in. Um, Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namah. Hari Om. So one more point just comes to mind. I realize that we're not progressing much through the text, because there is actually so much to really bring out in this teaching. At the current pace, with the calculations, it's going to take us 50 years to complete the Bhagavad Gita. I'm not even joking about that. So I will try to push the pace further, because we are just on page 32, and this is like more than 2,000, 3,000 pages. So think of it as 100 times this much. What week are we in right now? We are in week 15 something. So think, how much is that? Around 30x, not 30x, 60 times this. So yeah, it's a mind-boggling number. I'll probably be having a walking stick by then. So I'll try to start pacing us a little further down the line as well. Okay, so I'll take responsibility for that. If I don't, just remind me. All right. Namaste. See you all next week.
Thank you.
Or perhaps sooner. Who knows?
Okay.
Namaste.
Namaste.